I don't need that.
Yes.
Because they close it again, right? And we're kind of been dismissed by a lot of issues. The developers
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Please gather around.
Please gather around.
We have a very important speaker.
We have a very important speaker.
Norman Siegel.
Norman Siegel.
A renowned civil rights attorney.
A renowned civil rights attorney.
Will speak about 200 people.
200 people
Locked out of a public hearing.
locked out of the public hearing.
Norman Siegel.
Norman Siegel. Yay!
We are here today to support members of the Greenwich Village community who want and need a hospital in their community. And second, we're here today to speak out in strong opposition to what occurred last Tuesday at the public hearing concerning the current plan for the St. Vincent site. First and foremost, this community needs a hospital that is adequately accessible to its residents. Eliminating St. Vincent's Hospital, rather than replacing it with new management, creates a healthcare crisis for the residents. For example, it's not adequate if you need immediate emergency care and you must go to Beth Israel on the east side or St. Luke's Roosevelt up on West 59th Street. Residents need a hospital here on 12th Street and 7th Avenue. Do you agree?
Yes! Woo! Woo!
Right on. We urge all New Yorkers to stand with us in calling for a hospital here on 12th and 7th. This crucial issue is a Greenwich Village issue, but it's also a New York City issue. If the city can transform a community-zoned hospital site into luxury housing in this community, it creates a precedent that tomorrow they can do the same thing for your community. We must oppose that here and now, right?
Yes!
Hands off St. Vincent!
Hands
Hands
off St. Vincent!
Hands off St. Vincent!
Hands off St. Vincent! Hands off St. Vincent!
New hospital.
We demand a hospital! We
And a
demand a hospital! We demand a hospital!
Second, no, that's good. That's a good chant. Chants are protected under the First Amendment. Second, and very troubling, is how last Tuesday's hearing was conducted.
The guys in the gray hats and the blue hats and everybody in the front of the line here just signed in the book in front of everybody else who's been waiting.
Who are they?
They are supported by the union management. They've jumped the line and they're taking up democracy for their own purposes.
Shame on the City Council.
Shame!
Shame on the City Council's leadership.
Shame on the City Council's leadership!
And shame on the Speaker.
And shame on the Speaker!
Scheduling a hearing when you should have anticipated a large turnout. Scheduling it into a small room at 250 Broadway instead of the City Council chambers was not only wrong, but it's suspect. And even if you did not anticipate such a large turnout, by 9:30 in the morning, when so many people were out in the street wanting to testify, you should have at that moment moved the hearing to the City Council chamber, which could have accommodated at least 10 times more people. To have residents, many who reportedly were concerned senior citizens, wait for hours in the cold to get into a public hearing is cruel and undemocratic. The right of the public to fully participate in public hearings of public concern is a cornerstone of a democratic society. To deny the right is not what New York City's governing body should be all about. And reportedly, letting the Rudin spokespeople in and not allowing the opponents in on an equal basis is also wrong, undemocratic, and suspect. Public discourse must take place on an equal playing field. The City Council at a public hearing stage must be fair and provide all viewpoints an equal opportunity to present their views. This was not done last Tuesday. Last Tuesday, unfortunately, was unequal, and it favored one party in this controversy over another. Rudin spokespeople went first. The opponents followed. Rudin spokespeople had all members of the committee present to hear their position. By the time the opponents spoke, there were only 2 or 3 of the 11 council people or their representatives present. Not fair, wrong, and suspect.
Corruption!
This is not what democracy looks like. What happened last Tuesday requires at least 3 things. First, an investigation by the mayor's office into whether this hearing was conducted in error by oversight and lack of appropriate planning, or by a biased, intentional design. Second,
Biased, intentional design.
we need public statements by every city council member and all candidates wanting to run for mayor in 2013. We thank Tom Allen for making his statement, and he'll make a statement again today. But all the other people who want to be the mayor, where do you stand first on the current plan for St. Vincent? And second, where do you stand on what happened on Tuesday? Silence on these issues is simply unacceptable. And finally, we need a public apology by the City Council, or at a minimum, the City Council leadership, to all those people who came out that morning, stood in the cold for hours, and tried to get in to testify, and a public apology to the people who did testify, when in fact the overwhelming majority of the people on that panel were not there. This kind of lack of democratic process should not and will be not tolerated in the city of New York any longer. I thank you, and to the people that are here today, I know this is a very, very difficult challenge, and I know so far things have not worked to your advantage. But one of the things I've learned in the 40 years that I've been doing what I've been doing in civil rights, it's good to be smart, it's also good to be right. But the most important ingredient is stamina. You have to outlast the bastards. With regard to that, persevere, come together, support each other, and continue to fight. And as Dr. King always told us, we can overcome. Thank you.
All the people.
Thank you very much, Norman Siegel.
That was great, Norman. Norman, thank you very much. It's always hard to follow Norman Siegel in front of the camera. I should have gone first. 6 weeks ago, a former New York City official, Richard Shirer, was driving to work one morning, and on 14th Street and 10th Avenue, he started experiencing chest pains. By the time a hospital got him, an ambulance got him to the closest hospital, a half an hour later, he was dead. His blood is on the hands of everybody who let St. Vincent's Hospital die. And we can't allow it to happen again. His family is the poor, the city is the poor, and the residents of the village are at risk of becoming the next Richard Shirer. So we need to fight for a hospital in this community and in every community in the city. There's 2 things New Yorkers take for granted: access to health care and also representative government. And both have suffered at the hands of the council speaker and the city council in this case. I was there last week, and I was one of the lucky few that got inside. But I witnessed more than 100 people waiting outside, and a 75-year-old who collapsed outside of the city council, and took a half an hour for an ambulance to get to him. This is just not acceptable in the New York that I want to live in the New York that I want to lead. We have to demand that the council speaker actually do her job, and do her job in her district. This district needs a hospital. There's a plan on the table with the Rudins to put a hospital and keep a hospital here, and we have to keep the fight up until we get that hospital for this neighborhood. And I will do everything in my power to help all of you. And I thank you all for your fight, and I thank you all for inviting me here, and we're going to win this one together.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Miguel Acevedo, who is the president of the Fulton Houses, who will speak about a death because of St. Vincent's closing.
All right, Miguel.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here
Thanks,
today.
Miguel.
The death that took place was in the middle of December. It was a 20-year-old child who was shot and stabbed. He never made it to Beth Israel because he died in transportation. These are lives that we shouldn't be losing. These young kids who we're here to protect and admire for our future are going to be lost if we don't demand a hospital in the nearest future. I was one that supported the plan, to be honest with you. I am taking back my support for this plan because many families at Fulton Houses, which are low income and senior citizens, are in need of a hospital, have not seen doctors for over a year because they don't know where to go. And if we don't continue the fight for demanding a hospital, we're never going to get a hospital. Like Norman said, don't give up. We're not here to give up. We're not losers. We're going to fight till we get what we're demanding as a hospital back to this community. And Chelsea needs a hospital just as much as the village needs a hospital. And many families are lost. Please help us fight this battle. And I was one that was locked out of that public hearing. I represent over 3,500 residents in Robert Fulton Houses. And I'm a voice that wanted to speak to let people know, especially Leroy Comrie, who was saying about 2 hospitals that were lost in his district. Well, we're not going to let a hospital only be lost in our district without fighting. We're fighters here in the Greenwich Village and Chelsea. So we ain't giving up, Leroy. And I wanted you to hear what I had to say about my 20-year-old neighbor who was killed and never made it to Beth Israel, which is not even a trauma center. Okay? So even the paramedics were probably confused, where am I going to take this child? He's not here today. Tomorrow he would have been 21 years old. Leroy, we're not giving up. We're demanding that we have another public hearing for you to hear us speak, because we are the people. The people were locked out of this public hearing, and that's not fair to us. Thank you.
Bring back democracy to New York City! Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Elizabeth Saber, who's a West Village resident. She was locked out, and her really good friend collapsed on the pavement. Elizabeth.
Hi.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you. As you can imagine, it was a really dramatic experience on Tuesday morning. My friend and I were very excited to attend our first city council meeting. We've been to many community board meetings, but this was our first city council meeting, and he very much wanted to attend. He's a 75-year-old man. 10 years ago, he had a heart attack and is alive today, very much because he lives 5 minutes away from this spot. When we arrived and expected to simply, as usual, enter a building and enter what we imagined to be a large hall so that we could rest and warm up and maybe even sip our coffee while we awaited the meeting, instead, we were corralled in a pen along a flank of police officers. And we were told to wait. It was kind of chaotic. We were never told when we might be invited into the building. And after a prolonged time, my friend became faint. I rushed over to the entryway to what looked like a security personnel, and I explained the situation, and he cut me off rather abruptly and said, "We're letting people in 2 minutes anyway." as I tried to explain further, he turned on his heel and he retreated into the building. So as I came back to the crowd, I see my friend, who's a ghastly gray at this point, being lowered to the ground. And you can imagine this was a very dramatic, intense, ensuing time. I didn't know whether he was, his knees were collapsing or whether he was having a cardiac event, but he's absolutely fine. And he had said later that he was certainly among the right people because there were doctors and nurses who came up to him. Anyway, I read just last night that there would definitely be no more public testimony allowed on this particular issue. I know it's a complicated process, but you know, sometimes I feel that because this is a big city, because this is New York City, an international destination, an internationally focused location, that the residents' voices, the citizens' voices get lost. They get outshouted, they get outmoneyed, they get shoved to the side of a juicy market-based agenda. And whether or not this is wholly the case, I think it speaks to what happened on Tuesday. Citizens were not allowed their right for participatory democracy. And I, for one, hope and sincerely would like to convey, please never let that happen again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It took 35 minutes for an ambulance to arrive for her friend. In the meantime, Dr. David Kaufman, who was in the line, and Dr. Steve Auerbach was there. I'd like to introduce Dr. Steve, and he will speak to that issue.
Hi, my name is Dr. Steve Auerbach. I'm a pediatrician here in New York City. I have great professional experience in healthcare systems, and the problems that St. Vincent's are having are really part of a citywide, statewide, and nationwide problem we're having. Hospitals should be located on the basis of human need and not on the basis of corporate and real estate greed. The problem that we are having is St. Vincent's has closed and we need a new hospital on the west side of Manhattan below 57th Street. As you can see from this map, there is no hospital on the west side of Manhattan below 57th Street all the way down to the tip of Manhattan. Whether you're in Chelsea, Clinton, West Village, whether you're in Tribeca, any of these neighborhoods, your real estate value, they want to make this a real estate story, well, the value of your real estate is less because there is no emergency room, no trauma center, no hospital that's nearby. You've already heard stories about folks who've died or could have died because St. Vincent's was no longer there and the emergency travel time was too long. If this is your sick child, if this is your elderly grandmother or grandfather with a heart attack, if God forbid this is a cop who's shot or somebody else who suffers trauma, having to travel through New York City traffic all the way to the east side, the far east side, what is the nearest hospital with a real emergency room? Downtown Beekman, Beth Israel's not a level 1, up to St. Luke's or Roosevelt. That's just wrong. But you know, it's a systematic problem. We're having the same problem with hospitals being threatened to be closed in Brooklyn and community hospitals all over the country. And the problem is they want to tell you these are little one-off events because of a bankruptcy here or a little fraud problem there. They're not one-off events. There's a systematic problem in how we finance our healthcare system and how we reimburse the hospitals and doctors. It's a systematic problem that needs to be fixed. And it's, frankly, the same problem that we're having in a lot of other areas. The same stories you're hearing here is the microcosm of corrupt, rich people who have increased access to our politicians. It's the same problem that we have nationwide across a whole spectrum of issues. It's what's gotten the Occupy movement activated, and it's why even well-to-do doctors like myself and middle-class and working-class people are banded together because we are all in this together. There are attempts to divide and conquer around what people who want construction jobs and people who want good schools, and people who want hospitals, and people who want emergency rooms, and people who want good education for their children, and jobs that pay a living wage. It's all the same issue. We are all in this together, and it is the corrupted political process that remains the broadest underlying problem that will bring us together. So we need to fight for a hospital here on the west side, lower west side of Manhattan, for everybody. And we need to fight for health care for everybody, education for everybody, jobs at a living wage for everybody, and we need to remember we're all in this together, and frankly, it's the same fight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We have other important speakers, but I just want to draw everyone's attention to what can we do right now. On Wednesday, the subcommittee on zoning is going to vote whether this Rudin plan goes through. We must demand that they put a stop to that. We cannot live on the west side of Manhattan without a hospital. The Rudin Management Company had promised us the O'Toole building, and they can put 4 stories on this building here, and we can have a level 1 trauma center and not a phony 2-bed facility. We have been conned, people, and we must not allow this. You must flood City Hall, call Christine Quinn's office, call Mark Weprin, and at this point, looking around at other speakers, I wonder if Brad Holloman of Community Board 2 would like to address all of you. His community board voted this down, and it was ignored. Brad, come and tell.
Why don't you come say something?
Brad,
I just wanted to say, I'm an observer here, but I just wanted, Brad Holloman, I'm chair of Community Board 2. I just want to appreciate everyone and their attempts. We've been working hard as a community board with everyone here, local officials, residents most importantly, in trying to get a hospital back to the Lower West Side of Manhattan. I don't think there's a more important issue at the moment than getting a hospital on the Lower West Side of Manhattan. We're going to do our best in the months, weeks, years ahead. It may be a long slog, but we're committed as a community, I know, to bring healthcare services back to the Lower West Side of Manhattan. So thank you very much. I'm here as an observer, but I'm also energized as a participant and a resident in the community. So thank you so much.
Protect the infrastructure of our existing hospital.
I've lived on 12th Street for 50 years now. And 6 years ago, my life was saved in that very building.
I live on 11th Street.
And this year, I was in Brooklyn, where my life was saved again. Twice I have now had major emergencies. And on Tuesday, I was forced to stand in the cold for 4 hours with my feet freezing and feeling very weak, and wasn't sure whether I too would pass out. I got there at 8 o'clock in the morning. There were 30 union members ahead of me standing in line, plus the Rudin people, blocking all the seats so we couldn't get in to hear them speak and to speak ourselves. So it's like as though we were muffled from speaking. Our voices needed to be heard, and we needed to be able to respond to the people on the other side. This was not democratic. As I stood in line freezing and growing weak, I saw a police force almost as large as our crowd. How they could not have known that there would be hundreds of us in line, and they couldn't see that there were hundreds of us in line already. Finally, 2 friends who saw that I was weakening ushered me inside. I felt very guilty because there were people in their 60s and 70s and even 80s standing in line, weakening too. But they got me inside where I could sit down and warm up a little bit. But another 4 hours went by before I could speak. By the time the day was over and the hearing ended, I was one of the last speakers. I was so weak that when I went to get on the bus, I tripped and fell and injured my arm. I was supposed to be at the doctor this morning, but I'm still recovering from Tuesday, and this is Saturday now. What we need is a hospital with an emergency ward, not this faux facility that they're offering us. This is a giant real estate deal. Has been from the start. They're trying to destroy zoning and landmark law in Lower Manhattan, and we can't let that happen, because then all we'll have are skyscrapers down here, and we'll just be a carbon copy of Midtown. This is our neighborhood, and we will fight for it, and I will go down fighting.
Woo! All right, Elizabeth! Woo!
We have one more speaker.
My name is Shirley Gunson, and I live in the Robert Fulton houses. We're on the west side here. I'm making my comments to Mayor Bloomberg. Mr. Bloomberg, look at me. I am 83 years old, and I want to live longer. If there's no hospital here, I don't know what I'm going to do. This is getting ridiculous, so please, get off your behind and give us a hospital here.
Woo!
We need it.
Thank you. Folks, we've got important breaking news. Christine Quinn is right now speaking at PS 41.
Other way.
I believe. Okay, sorry, that way. PS 41 on 11th Street and 6th Avenue.
Between
6th and 7th
Avenue.
I would like all of us to go there.
Yes.
We need to speak to Christine Quinn because the full council hearing is going to be on Wednesday. It's not only the subcommittee. We have just heard now that the full council is going to vote on this atrocious plan on Wednesday, and we must stop it. We must get our full service Trauma 1 hospital. Thank you.
There's infrastructure in this Triangle Park that's 4 levels down with tanks. At the hearing, which I wasn't able to hear all of the Rudin testimony because I was locked out, it was said that in the O'Toole building there's been some temporary tanks put in. If there's only 2 beds, you don't need big oxygen tanks, you don't need CO2 tanks, you don't need any kind of gaseous tanks. I know the Rudins want to take out the tanks from the park and fill it in. That is infrastructure that is key to having a full-service Trauma 1 hospital back in our community. If those tanks are removed, and I will tell you after the vote, I will tell you those tanks will be removed. You will never see another hospital again. You need that off-site. All those infrastructure needs to be off-site. Otherwise, we will lose this and it will just remain urgent care. So it is urgent that we protect the infrastructure of this community for a hospital and not let this be filled in at all. Thanks.
What are the odds that the people are going to get a chance to have their testimony heard by the council?
Well, as of this moment, the odds are very, very low. But perhaps with this press conference and with some follow-up, they will be given a chance to speak. The fact that they were, in effect, denied the opportunity to speak last Tuesday taints the process. And if the process is approved, it's tainted because people didn't have a chance to set forth their views in opposition to the current plan. This is not good.
Now, have you ever seen this done before?
Not to this extent, but there has been in the last few years similar situations where people try to get into public hearings and they're denied because the room is too small to accommodate the people who are coming to testify. And that's why you shouldn't have these hearings at 250 Broadway. At a minimum, they should be in the City Council chamber, which can hold 10 times as much as the rooms at 250. And in some instances, even the City Council chamber is not enough when you have a couple of thousand people who want to testify. So the City Council needs to plan better with regard to public hearings, because the premise of a public hearing is to allow the public to set forth its views, including opposition to the plan that's before the City Council. Last Tuesday, that didn't happen, and that is a fundamental flaw in what a democratic society is supposed to be all about.
Christine Quinn! Kids need a hospital! Christine Quinn! The kids need a hospital! Christine Quinn! Let the people in! Christine Quinn! Let the people in! Christine Quinn! Let the people in!
School's policy, it's not her policy.
Doesn't matter.
Oh, here comes the policy.
If it is, then it would be. It's on one side so we don't block this entrance.
Okay. Thank you. You're so
It speaks to what happened at City Council.
It speaks to the fact that she locked out her, Christine Quinn locked out her own community. So first we're going to say, Christine Quinn, let the people in! 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 Christine Quinn, let the people in!